Hello everyone and welcome back to the good stuff. We are continuing the 1858 simultaneous blindfold exhibition that Morphy played against 8 opponents, and this is the last game we'll be showing. We don't know who the gentleman he's facing is. We only know his name is C.H. Seguin, and there are some instances where it's been where it's been shown that he is 49 years of age. But other than that, we don't really know all that much. We do know, however, that he is a very strong player, and as you'll see in this game, he gives Morphy the most problems during this entire blindfold event. So without further ado, let's check it out. And also, it's been said of this game that he's a gentleman of 49 who contended with great desperation. So let's see what they mean by this. Morphy, with the white pieces, opens with e4, as he usually does. We have e5. Knight to f3, and now d6, going for Philidor's defense. So of course Morphy will strike in the center. d4, captures, and now knight to f6. We have knight to c3, so this is all very standard stuff. And bishop to e7. We have bishop to d3. Morphy usually develops his bishops on d3 and d3, as you've seen if you've been following the saga so far. We have castles and now f4, so grabbing more space in the center, gaining very nice control here. He's gonna castle next and continue development. And here we have c5, and it is already as of move 7 that this position has never been reached again. So let's see how Morphy deals with this. He goes back with the knight to f3, and now knight to c6. We have castles by Morphy and bishop to g4, and it's usually the case when someone plays bishop to g4, plays your knight. It's either a good move or it's not a good move. Here it's hard to say, but what you kind of don't want to do is give up this bishop for knight, and Morphy will put this to the test. First, he develops the dark square bishop. Like we said, he enjoys developing his bishops to d3 and e3, and now a6. Of course, preparing b5, further expanding on the queen side. So Morphy stops this with a4, and now h6. And now, after all of these so-called useful moves have been depleted, we have h3, finally challenging the bishop. And now you should probably go back, something like bishop d7, bishop to e6 even is possible. But then you face moves like, for example, f5 and then bishop d7, and it's well, it's not pleasant for black to play this, but it's nothing terrible. But instead, we have bishop captures on f3, and Morphy, of course, is very happy to now win one of the bishops. So queen captures on f3, and knight to b4 now, putting pressure on the light square bishop, but also controlling d5 many times, so black might have some ideas of pushing d5. We have rook 8 to d1 by Morphy, and now queen to c7, developing the queen, connecting rooks, and asking Morphy what do you want to do here. So here Morphy has to decide whether he wants to go super aggressive with g4, g5, or he wants to just keep everything solid. So for the moment he decides to go b3, just a nice move, keeping everything intact. And now black should also just continue developing. You still have 2 undeveloped rooks. You should bring them over to c8 or d8, depending on where you want to develop your rooks. But here instead we have knight captures on d3. And usually in chess you don't want to capture unless you gain something by it. Also an old chess saying is to take is a mistake. If you've gained nothing by taking, don't capture. So here c captures on d3, and now rook f to e8, so continuing development. And now again Morphy can decide whether to immediately strike with some kingside moves, but for the moment he goes d4. And here Morphy wants c captures on d4 to be played, because then he gets his bishop here, probably would eliminate the knight from f6, and then he would gain control of the d5 square. Then the knight comes to d5, and that's just a monster knight right there. Black would have no pieces able of opposing this knight, because the knight would be gone and there would only be a dark square bishop, and d5 of course is a light square. So instead, after this d4, black does not capture. Black goes queen to c6 instead, now puts more pressure on this e4 pawn. If the bishop moves, the rook will also help out here. But now comes the move that basically shifts the game completely in Morphy's favor. So feel free to pause the video and try to find this idea while I give you a couple of seconds. It's not probably not what you're going for, but it also might be. So let's see what you guys come up with. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this really anti-positional d captures on c5. Also, for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's not a move that you look for, because usually you never want to capture away from the center. You either want to capture towards the center or not capture at all. But here it just makes sense, and Morphy shows why. So now you won a pawn. Black can either win the pawn back or, you know, just be down a pawn. So basically you have to capture back. So d captures on c5 was played, but now comes e5, and this is the point. The knight is under attack, and also the queen is under attack. So here it doesn't really matter what you do. Either way, you're gaining the d5 square for your knight. So here, queen captures on f3 was played, rook captures, and now the problem is the knight has no squares, or rather no good squares. All of these squares are taken or not available to the knight. The only squares where the knight can actually go to are h5 and h7. But if the knight goes to h7, then g4 wins the knight. So the knight is pushed back all the way into the corner with rook to h7. And this is the point of the entire d captures on c5 concept, rook to d7. A nice rook lift, and now white is simply so much better. So how can you defend against this? The b7 pawn is hanging, so rook 8 to b8, of course, and now knight to d5. The knight finally comes to d5, and now it's just a monster knight, whereas this knight on h7 is not really, well, doing all that great, and you will require a few more moves to activate it, if it will at all be possible. So knight to d5 with tempo, as the bishop is now hanging. So bishop back to f8, and now bishop to f2, making room for this rook to come to c3. And of course, white will want to put more pressure to the c5 pawn, in the end win it, and then Morphy will just enjoy his extra pawn advantage. And it's going to be much easier for Morphy's king to be activated than for the black king to be activated. So let's see how Seguin deals with this. We have rook e to d8, immediately charges that rook. We have knight to b6 now, an excellent square for the knight, and the rook is nicely protected. So here black trades, there really isn't anything better. Captures, now attacking the rook, and the rook to c8 now, defending the c5 pawn, as it was attacked twice by the bishop and by the knight. But now Morphy just brings in a third attacker to the pawn, rook to c3, and now there's no defending the pawn. Here you just have to give it up. So here rook to c7, black even forces this. Knight captures not on c5 but rather on f8, so better to trade down even further. Knight captures, and now rook captures on c5. Finally, it all came down to this from that d captures on c5 move that happened on move 18. Now 10 moves later, Morphy is up a pawn, and you know, for those of you who might have forgotten, yes, Morphy is playing this blindfold from another room. So rook captures on c5, bishop captures, and now the question is, how do you continue? Your only advantage is that, well, you have two advantages basically, or three. Your king is a bit more active, or rather it can be. It can be more easily activated. Number two, you have a bishop against a knight, and we have play on both sides of the board, and the bishop can cover a lot more space than a knight can here. And of course, you are up a pawn, let's not forget that. So taking all this into consideration, this should be a winning endgame. And you know, unless there's some sort of a supercomputer way to hold this, I don't think it will be possible. So here, knight to e6, attacking the bishop, making room for the king to enter the game. Morphy goes back, bishop to e3. Also a reasonable way to retreat, because now all of these squares are covered, so the knight really cannot go anywhere. The bishop controls it nicely. For those of you who are maybe new to chess and don't know about this relationship between the bishop and the knight, sort of a long distance relationship thing, we have g6 and g4 by Morphy. We have knight to d8. Here black has to decide whether he wants to continue pushing pawns, whether he wants to try and activate the king somehow. But here black will rather try to create some sort of a wall so that white king cannot enter the game. So here knight to d8 and king f2. Morphy starts bringing the king into the game. We have knight to c6 and now king to e2, bringing the king deeper into the game. We have b5, captures, captures, and now king to d3, and now just king to f8. And this was black's idea, kind of, that now the pawn covers these squares, the knight covers these squares, so there's a kind of a wall that the white king cannot breach, but the white king can always go king e4, king d5, so it's not really a problem. Bishop to c5 check, we have king to e8, and now king to e4. Like we said, there's always a way for Morphy's king to enter the position. King to d7, now king to d5. So that's a lot more active king than the black king on d7. Knight to d8, and now comes f5. There's very little black can do here. We have captures, captures, and now h5. We have bishop to b6. When you're up a pawn in positions like these, well, if you can trade off the remaining pieces, then the king and pawn endgame will just be winning. So knight to b7, black of course will try to prevent this, but now you just continue pushing. e6 with check, captures, captures with check, king e7, and now king to c6. You cannot approach the center of the board, but you can now reach the queen side. So attacking both knight and the b5 pawn. Knight d8 check, and now there's really not much to consider here. The easiest way to end the game is just to eliminate the knight. So bishop captures was played, king captures, and now not capturing the b5 pawn, but that was also winning. Morphy just shows that there's nothing to be done and plays king to d6. We have king to e8 and now e7. And it was in this position on move 47 that C.A. Seguin, who we know nothing about, resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. There's no way to continue, and there are no tricks in the position. For example, if you go h4, you're just gonna play b4, and then it's black's move. There is no stalemate, so after the king moves, just king d7 next to bring a queen into the game and just nicely win the game. So after this e7, Seguin resigned, and another excellent victory for Paul Morphy. As they said of Morphy's achievement here, the blindfold player's achievement was a splendid one, for he won 6 games and drew 2 games against a powerful opposition, and moreover made no error of real importance. And it's not just that Morphy played against 8 opponents simultaneously blindfold, but as Morphy was in another room than all of these other players. I think we've shown the photo of the Café de la Régence, how it was, well, at least how it was portrayed. I don't know how exactly it looked, but it was said that Morphy was actually playing more like against 50 people than against those 8, because every one of those 8 had more people that was, also checking out the position, helping him out, and, well, Morphy didn't care. And he completed all of this in one sitting without having any refreshments, without drinking water or having food, as he was afraid that he would have to go use the toilet, and then people would maybe say that he was cheating or something. So he did all of it without doing any of it. He just sat in his chair and, crushed everyone. Well, 6 wins, 2 draws, but for a blindfold simultaneous exhibition against opponents of actual skill, this is quite an achievement. So not only that, the next day he woke up like maybe 6:30 a.m., maybe even 6 a.m., and he came over to Edge at like 7 a.m. and he told him to grab a piece of paper and a pen, that he would like to recite all of the moves from all of the games, plus additional variations, so they have it saved, for historical purposes, so that we can now in 2021 analyze it on YouTube. So good thing Morphy was an early bird, otherwise, we might not have moves to this game recorded. And yeah, interestingly, the next day Morphy caught a cold. As they say, he fell asleep near an open window, but it was exactly on the next day. Probably Harvitz heard that Morphy caught a cold, and he said that he would like to continue the match now. So game 7 is coming, and we will see how the match continues. So next game in the Morphy saga will be, again, the continuation of the match against Harvitz. Morphy with a cold against Harvitz, who is now, I guess, fully rested. So we'll see if that helps out our old friend Harvitz, or will it still be insufficient. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this one, and Morphy really played a spectacular game in every possible imaginable way. I mean, to play it like that, in a blindfold contest, just amazing stuff, and especially the end game. Once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Raško Stevanic, Dennis Cypher, Jerry Draver, Russell Lloyd, and Blake Teriao for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.